Welcome to teaching learning session of sociology. Today we'll discuss about a monograph that is Argonauts of Western Pacific by Malinovisky, B. Malinovisky. We discussed about this in our previous lecture too. Right, today we'll discuss this monograph in detail. This classical monograph, authored by B. Malinovisky, entitled Argonauts of Western Pacific, first published in 1922. As we know that Malinovisky was the first anthropologist, English anthropologist, who has given much emphasis on ethnography, right? Uh, and he studied about the Trobroin Society, and Trobroin Society is one of the holy places in the anthropological cosmography, with the Malinovisky first putting the anthropological map to study about their culture, to study about their lifestyle. Malinovisky lived with the natives for many months, in fact, for years together. They He watched them daily at work, at play, conversing with them in their own tongue, and deriving all his information from the sheerest source. Personal observation and statement made to him directly by natives in their own language without the intervention of interpreter. We discussed about few principles, few do's of ethnographies, right? One of them was that one should be able to understand the language of the natives and should be able to communicate with their own language. Observation is the one of the tools which is one of the best tools for ethnographers, right? So he stayed with natives, Troglodyne Islands natives, and he watched them daily at work, play, and converse them within their language, right? Personal observations, right, about their lifestyle, about their culture, helped B. Malinovisky to understand their culture effectively. Malinovisky's work established the participant observations as the most important method for anthropological field. The data collection, researchers' observation, and the long-term involvement with the community life and participation in cultural events become important. The main focus of Malinovisky book is remarkable system of exchange, locally called Kula, among the Tobrine Islander, which is an economic or commercial only in part, and which also examines the motives and feeling underlying this, with the magic playing a very important role in this unit, right? He observed the Kula process, right? Kula is one of the important process, and in this monograph the Kula is a remarkable Kula is a remarkable system of exchange, right? The subject and methods of the inquiry: the coastal population of South Sea Island, with very few exceptions, were before their extinction expert navigators and the traders, right? The population, the Toblerone Islanders, right, or the population of this island, they are good navigators and traders. They are daring sailors, industrious manufacturer, and the keen traders, right? They are navigators, they are traders, they are industrious. The manufacturing center of important articles such as pottery, stone, stone implements, fine basket, valued ornament. All these are the important articles which they manufacture or trade. Definite form of exchange along definite trade routes are found established between the various tribes. There is a well-defined trade routes. There were well-defined exchange process, right? And the most remarkable form of intertribal trade is that obtaining between the Motu of the Port Moresby and the tribes of Papuan Gulf, as there was a well-defined trade route trade as well as the well-defined trading communities. So among them, the Motu of the Port Moresby and the tribes of Papuan Gulf, they are the intertribal uh, traders. The Motu sail for hundreds of miles in heavy, unwieldy canoes called lakoti, which are provided the characteristic crab claw sail. They bring pottery and shell ornament. In olden days, stone blades to Gulf Papuan, from whom they obtain in exchange sago and a heavy dugouts, which are used afterwards by the Motu for the construction of their Lokoti canals. So there was a trade between the Motu, right, and Gulf Papuan, between the Motu and the Gulf Papuan. What Motu bring pottery and other shell ornament, and in exchange, they get sago and the heavy dugout, which the Motu use for the construction of Lakoti cannons, right? There exists another very extensive and highly complex trading system, embarrassing with its ramification, not only the island near the eastern, but it penetrates into the mainland, including the Tobroin. The trading system, the Kula, is the subject Malinowski described in this work, and it will be seen that it is an economic phenomenon of considerable theoretical importance. Although there were the trade between the Motu and the Gulf, between the Motu and the Gulf Papuans, another trading system which Malinowski observed is the Kula, and this Kula system is the subject which the Malinowski described in his monograph. It looms paramount in the tribal life of those natives who live within its circuit, and its importance is fully recognized by the tribesmen themselves, whose ideas, ambitions, desire, and vanities are much bounded up with the Kula. And was a very important trading system, right? And its importance was fully realized by the tribesmen themselves, right? And as Malinowski noted that the ethnographer has in the field the duty before him of drawing up all the rules and regulation of the tribal life, all that is permanent and fixed, of giving anatomy their culture, depicting constitutions of their society. As we all know that there is no expressed code of laws, and their whole tribal tradition, the whole structure of the society are embedded in most elusive of all material, the human being, right? The country and the inhabitants of the Kula districts, right? The tribe inhabit the easternmost end of the main island of New Guinea, and those islands scattered in the form of long drawn arclog, which continue in the same southeasterly trend as the mainland, as if to bridge over the gap between the New Guinea and the Solomons. The actual distribution of the races in New Guinea shows that the eastern part of the main island and the archipelago of New Guinea and the racial distribution of the natives. The interior of the continents, the low Sago swamp, and the deltas of Gulf of Papua, probably greater part of the north coast of the southwest coast of New Guinea, are inhabited by the relatively tall, dark-skinned, frizzy-haired race. So he described about that country. That country was divided into eastern part, interiors, and the north coast, right? And there are there were the trades between the different tribes, inter-tribe trades were there, and he described about the natives of these different geographical regions. The eastern Papuans, that is generally smaller, lighter colored, frizzy haired races of the eastern peninsula of New Guinea and its archipelagos now require a name. And since the true Melanesians elements is dominant in them, they may be called as Papua Melanesians. The Papua Melanesians again can be divided into two groups, a western and the eastern one. The Kula district lies at the easternmost end of the main island, and the archipelago lie into the east and the northeast. So Kula was what? Kula was a district, right? And it lies in the easternmost part end of the main island, and the archipelagos lie in the east and the northeast. As per the professor S.G. segment, this area can be divided into two months. The small northern portion comprising of Province and a Marshall Bennett and the woodlands, as well as number of smaller islands such as Lagellans. A far larger southern portion comprising the remainder of Massam domain. It is necessary to divide this northern Massam further into three parts. First, that of the Trobriand Islander or the Boyovans. Secondly, that the native of Woodlark Island and the Marshall Bennett, and then thirdly, a small group of Amphilet natives. In this, Malinowski has divided the geography into three or four parts, and he described about the natives, about the races of these geographical regions. The natives of the Tobrine Island. There are the men and women of the tall structure, fine bearing, delicate features with clear cut aquiline profile and a high forehead. So he described about their features. Well formed nose and the chin, and open intelligent expressions. And besides this, there are others with prognatic and negroid faces, broad, thick lipped mouth, narrow forehead, and the coarse expression. The better featured have also a markedly lighter skin. They wear the same classes of ornament as other Massams, consisting mainly of fiber armlets and belts, earrings, turtle shell, and spontaneously discs. And they are very fond of using for personal decoration flowers and aromatic herbs. So he described about their features. He described about their ornaments, right? As soon as the interesting stranger arrives, half of the village assembles around him, talking loudly and making remarks about him, frequent, uncomplimentary, and altogether assuming a tone of humorous familiarity. One of the main sociological features at once strike an observant newcomer, the existence of rank and social differentiation. So he said that there was an existence of the rank and the social differentiation even at that island, even between among those tribes. There was a remarkable feature, and that is the existence of the rank system was there, and there was a social differentiation. Some of the natives, very frequently those of the finer looking type, are treated with most marked deferences by others, and in return, these chiefs and the persons of rank behave in quite different way towards the stranger. There is an hierarchical system, there is a ranking system, there is a social differentiation, right? Some of the natives, very frequently those of the finer looking types, are treated with most marked differences by the other, and the chiefs and the person of the rank behave in a quite different ways towards the stranger. When the chief is present, no commoner dares to remain in a physically higher position. He has to bend his body or squat. Similarly, when the chief sits down, no one would dare to stand. So these are the certain cultural aspects that chief holds the most important position among the tribes, right? And the chief, when the chief is there, right? So no commoner dare to remain in the physical higher position than the chief, and that the commoner has to bend their bodies and the squat. And when the chief is down, no one can dare to stand. Chieftainship in the Trobroin is the combination of two institutions. Firstly, that is of the headmanship or the village authority, and second, that is of totemic clanship. That is the division of community into classes or caste, each with certain more or less definite rank. As there was a ranking system, and this who will be the chief, that chief means depends on the two things, that is first is the authority and second depends on the totemism. There was a division of the community, that community is divided into classes, into caste, and that they have certain ranking systems, right? In every community in the top line, there is one man who wields the greatest authority, though often this doesn't amount to very much. The village headman is, as rule, therefore not much more than the master of tribal ceremonies and main speaker within and without the tribe whenever one is needed. In the Trabroin, there exists a four totemic clan, and each of these is divided into number of smaller sub-clan. right? There are certain amount of solidarity within the clan based on the vague feeling of communal affinity to totem birds or animals. There was a totemic system, right? And on the basis of totemic system, these in the top line there exists the four totemic clans, and these clans are further divided into subclans, and there is the solidarity among the clans that is based on very vague feeling of communal affinity, that is the birds and animals. Many social duties such as performance of certain ceremonies bind the members of clans together, but real solidarity obtained only between the members of the sub-clans, right? There was a solidarity among the members of the clan, but the real solidarity exists among the members of the sub-clans. The magico-religious idea of the Trabenders, they are almost completely devoid of any fear of ghost, of any of these uncanny feeling. The spirit migrates immediately after death to island of Tuma, lying in the northwest of Goa. So there was a feeling, there was a idea that the spirit after the death immediately migrate to the island of Tuma. They return to visit their own village once a year and take part in the big annual feast, mm, Milamala, where they receives the offerings. So it was their belief that they move to the Tuma Island and they visit their own village once in a year to take part in a big annual feast, that is Milamala, and where they receives the offering. They were devoid of any fear of ghost. Diseases, health, and that are also result of magic or the counter magic. The Trobrinder have very complex and very definite set of theoretical views of these matters. They that the Trobrinder believed in the magic, and according to them, that disease, health, and death are also a result of the magic and the counter magic, and they have a very complex and very definite set of theoretical views, right? The essentials of kulas. The kula is a form of exchange. Kula, what is a kula? Kula is a district, and kula is also a process. It is a process of exchange. It is a form of exchange of extensive intertribal character. It is carried out by the community inhabiting a wide ring of island, which forms a closed circuit. Right. So it is an see, Akula is a district, and it is a process, that is what it, this process is an exchange of extensive intertribal character, and it is carried out by the community inhabiting the wide range of the island, and which forms, it forms a closed circuit. It is a closed circuit. It is represented by the lines joining the number of island to north and east of the east end of New Guinea. Along this route, articles of two kinds, and these two kind only, are constantly traveling in the opposite direction. See, there was a well-defined tribes where the exchange takes place, right? And along this route, that is along the route that is between the east and the north and the east of the east end of this New Guinea, along this route, article of two, there are the articles of two kinds, and these two kinds are constantly traveling in the opposite direction. In the direction of hands of clock moves constantly one of these kind, long necklaces of red shell called solva, right? There are articles which moves in the definite directions, right? They, along the route, the article of two time and two kinds are constantly traveling in the opposite direction. One article which is known as solva, right? That this solva moves in the direction of hands of clocks, means it moves clockwise constantly. Of these kinds, these are what these solvers are, the long necklace of long of red shells, that is I'm repeating it. What is solver? Solver is nothing but a long necklace of red shells. It moves in a direction, in clockwise direction, right? And in opposite direction moves the another kind of bracelet of white shell called mavali. And this mavali, what is mavli? Mavli is bracelets of white shell. It moves in anti-clockwise direction. Each of these articles, as it travels in its own direction on the closed circuit, meets on its way articles of other class and is constantly being exchanged for them. And as it moves in the opposite direction, that in own direction, in a closed circuit, and it meets that all these articles meets on in way articles of other class and is constantly being exchanged for them. Every movement of the Kula article, every details of the transaction is fixed and regulated by set of traditional rules and conventions, and some acts of Kula are accompanied by an elaborate magical rituals and public ceremonies. See, Kula, there are the two things, Solva and Mavi. Solva is what long necklace of the red shells. It moves in the clockwise direction, and Mavi is a bracelet of white shells, and it moves in the anti-clockwise direction. They move in the opposite direction, right? And each movement of the Kula article, right, of any Kula articles, every detail of transaction is fixed and regulated by these sets of rules and regulations and conventions. And some act of kulas are accompanied by elaborate magical rituals and public ceremonies. On every island, in every village, a more or less limited number of men take part in the kula, and that is to say, receive the goods, hold them for a short time, and then pass them on. See, on every island, there were many islands, right? On every island, and in every village, a limited number of men take part in the kula. They receive the goods, they hold that goods for a shorter time, and then they have to pass it on, right? Therefore, every man who is in the kula periodically, though not regularly, receives one or several mavi or the solva, and then has to hand it to one of his partner for whom he receives the opposite commodity in exchange. So that one can hold that movli or sua for a shorter time, and then he has to pass it on, and he has to pass it him to his partner from whom he receives the opposite commodity in exchange. Thus, no man ever keeps any article for a length of time in his possession. The kula is not substitutious and precarious form of exchange. It is quite on the contrary rooted in myth, backed by traditional law, and surrounded by the magical rites. So Kula is what Kula is a process, is a cultural process, right? It is this process or this is rooted in myth. It is backed by the traditional laws and is surrounded by the magical rites. All its mail transactions are the public and ceremonial and carried out according to the definite rules. Because we discussed that there are certain rules which has to be followed for the exchange of these articles. So these transactions are public and ceremonial, and it carried out according to the definite traditional rules. It is not done on the spur of the moment, but happens periodically at the date settled in advance, and it is carried out along a definite trade route which must lead to a fixed testing places. Right? This partnership is a lifelong relationship. It implies various mutual duties and privileges and constitutes a type of intertribal relationship on an enormous scale. And this why this process is so important, because it constitute because it helps in formation of a partnership, and it is a life in fact a lifelong relationship. This partnership could be the lifelong relationship. It implies various mutual duties and privileges, and it constitutes a type of intertribal relationship on an enormous scale. As to the economic mechanism of transaction, this is based on the specific form of credit, which implies a high degree of mutual trust and commercial honor. And this refers also to the subsidiary minor trades which accompanies the Kula process. The Kula is not done under stress of any need. since its main aim is to exchange the article which are of no practical use. The objects are cherished because of historical sentiment which surrounds them. These articles are practically of no use, but this Kula process was is important, and these objects, that is Sulva and Molvi, these are cherished. These objects are cherished because of the historical sentiment which surrounds them. The exchange of these two classes of Vegua, arm shell, and the necklace constitutes the main act of Kula. This exchange is not done freely, right and left as opportunity offers, and where the whim leads. It is subjected in need to a strict limitations and regulation. As we said, that this process is binded with certain rules, regulation, traditional laws. Two continuous streams will constantly flow on one of the necklace in the hands of clock, that is clockwise, and other composed of the arm shell in anti-clockwise directions. Right. So this was a Kula process. List of gifts, payments, and the commercial transaction. Peer gifts, an act in which individual gives an object or renders his services without expecting or getting any return. This is not a type of transactions very frequently met in the tribal life. Gifts in the Troblanders are conceived as a definite act with a social meaning rather than transmission of object. It results that where social duties do not directly imposes them, gifts are very rare. So gift is what, when you give some object to someone without anything, without expecting anything in return, and these gifts are very rare among the tribes of this island. The most important type of free gift are present characteristic of relationship between husband and wife and parents and children. Right? Among the Troblanders, husband and wife own their things separately. They own their things separately if the two partner has special parts of the household goods under control. Customary payment repaid irregularly and without strict equivalence. The most important of these are the annual payment received at the harvest time by the men from his wife's brothers. Right. So there was a tradition that the wife's brothers pays the annual payment to the men, that is to the husband of the sister. The regular and unfailing gifts are so substantial that they form a bulk of men's income in food. Sociology. Sociologically there are perhaps the strongest strand in the fabric of Province tribal constitutions. They entail a lifelong obligation to every man to work for its kinswomen and their families. When a boy begins to garden, he does it for his mother. When his sister grow up and marry, he works for them. If he has neither mother nor sister, his nearest female blood relation will claim and proceed of his labor. So, brother has to work for the mother or for the sister. The reciprocity of these gifts never amounts to their full value, but the recipient is supposed to give a valuable or a pig to his wife's brother from time to time. He works for the sister's family or for mother, and the sister's family is supposed to give a gift, that is a valuable or a pig to the wife's brother from time to time in return. Payment for services rendered, it has to be given each time the services is performed, but no direct economic equivalence. Since one of the term of equation consists of the services, the value of which cannot be assessed except a conventional estimate. All services done by the specialist for individual or for the community belong there. The most important, these are undoubtedly the services of magicians. See, there was an hierarchical system, and everyone was skilled in different. Everyone has a different skill set, right? And all services are done by the specialist for individual or for the community belongs here, right? So all the services that is done by the specialist could be for the individual or could be for the community. And the most important among these services is the services of the magician, because the magic was very important part of these tribes, right? The garden magician, for instance, receives a definite group a gift from the community and from the certain individuals. The sorcerer is paid by the men who ask him to kill or who desires to be healed. The present given for the magic of rain and fair weather were very considerable, right? Gifts are returned in economically equivalent form. These were the gifts which were not in equivalent form, economically equivalent form. There are certain gifts which are in the equivalent form. Gift as must be repaid with almost strict equivalence for these services. But it must be stressed that the strict equivalence of two gifts does not assimilate them to trade altogether. There can be no perfect equivalence between the gift and the counter gift. There could be no perfect, but still they are of somewhat equivalence, right? The meaning of the kula seems to be a certain extent the novel type of ethnological fact. The novelty lies partly in the size of sociological and the geographical event. It was a sociological as well as a geographical event. A big intertribal relationship uniting with a definite social bond at vast area and a greater number of people, binding them with definite types of reciprocal obligations, making them to follow a minute rules even, and observation in the concentrated manner. So this kula is a big intertribal relationship, right? Because there is an exchange of goods, equivalent goods. They unite with a definite social bonds and a vast area and a great number of people are binded together with reciprocal obligations, and this making them to follow the rules and the observation in a concentrated manner. The kula is a sociological mechanism of surpassing size and complexity considering the level of culture. Another unusual feature is the characteristic of the transaction itself, which is the proper substance of the kula, a half commercial, half ceremonial exchange that is carried out for its own sake in fulfillment of deep desire to possess. See, as we discussed that these articles is of no economical value, but these are the these articles gives the fulfillment of desire to possess, right? It the person who possesses that articles, it elevates the rank, it elevates the position of that person. That position of these articles elevates the position of that person in this society. So it has a certain sociological mechanism, and it is commercial as well as ceremonial, right? It is not ordinary possession but a very special time in which a man owns for a short time and in an alternating manner individual specimen of two classes of object. Though the ownership is incomplete in point of permanency, it is in turn enhanced in the point of numbers of successively possessed and may be called a cumulative possession. See, that article economically is of no use, right? And no one can possess that article for forever. They have to exchange it. They can possess it for a certain period of time and then they have to pass it on. But what is important is the successive possessions. For how many times they possessed that article, they had that article, it plays an important role, and this is called the cumulative possessions. Again increases the it elevates the position of a person in society. The greatest important and which reveals the best unusual character of Kulas is the native's mental attitude towards the token of wealth. Right? That as I said, that it elevates the position. How it elevates the position? Because it is considered as a token of wealth. That who possesses that article, it has been considered that that person is wealthy. These later are neither used nor regarded as money or currency, and they resemble these economic instruments very little. If needed, there is a resemblance at all, except both money and wealth represents the condensed wealth. Vaga is never used as a medium of exchange or measure of value, which are those two most important functions of currency or money. The act of exchange of valuable have to conform to a definite code, right? The main tenet of this declare the transition is not a bargain. This transition is not a bargain. The equivalence of values exchanged is essential, but it must be result in the repayer's own sense of what is due to custom and not his own dignity. See, when you are there is an exchange and there is no bargain in this transaction, right? The equivalence of values are exchanged, the equivalence of exchange is essential, right? But it must result in the repairs own sense, right? It is due to the custom and not because of the dignity. The ceremonial attached to the act of giving, the manner of carrying and handling a vaga show distinctly that this is regarded as something else there merchandise. Indeed, it is a native, something that confers dignity, that exalts them, and when he therefore treats with monograph, that is Argonauts of Western Pacific. This is one of the most important monograph of ethnography, right? What is we discussed about the ethnography, right? B. Malinovisky was an English. Quick recap of today's lecture. B. Malinowski was one of the English anthropologists, right? Uh, he started this anthropological study, and there are certain principles which he defined, and according to these principles, it is important that the researcher should be able to understand the language of the natives, right? So that he could converse with the natives in their own language and should be able to, and by this, the researcher should be able to get the first hand data. Second is, it is important for the researcher to stay with natives for a certain period of time, right? So that they could understand their culture, they could understand what they are doing and why they are doing what they are doing, right? Third important thing about this is what Malinowski said as that observation is one of the most important method of ethnography, right? One should observe, observe being a part of, according to Malinowski, one should observe the customs, traditions of the natives, being a part of that community, so that you could understand the reasons behind those ceremonies and the cultures, right? And B. Malinowski studied about the Argonauts, that is, natives of his studied about the subject of his study was the natives of the Trobriand Islands, right? And his monograph is his monograph titled as the Argonauts of the Western Pacific, right? Argonauts in this, he described this Merlino whiskey in this monograph. This is a classical monograph, and in this, he basically described the two things, that is the importance of the Kula system, right? Which he observed among the tribes, and another is the importance of the magics among the tribes, right? So he observed these two things, and he described these two aspects of their culture in this monograph. Kula system, what is a Kula system? Actually, Kula is one of the district of the island, and the tribes, there is a Kula is one of the district, and there are the various tribes. He described, first of all, in this, he described about the geography of this island, that this island is divided into eastern coast, north, and the western coast. And then again, he divided the tribes and he named how the tribes have been divided, right? And he described that there is a social differentiation among the tribes, right? And there is a certain hierarchical system among the members of the tribe. They follow this hierarchical system, and there is a certain mm, um, um, hierarchy. There is a certain hierarchy, and there is a social differentiation, like on the basis of the classes and the caste. They are divided among the classes and the caste, right? So he observed the various things, right? And among them he described the kula system. What is the kula system? Kula is exchange of Kula is one of the district, and he observed that in this district there is a exchange of some important valuables among the tribes, well defined tribes, right? See, in Kula system there are two articles. One is a long red a long necklace of made up of red shells, right? That is known as solva. And another item which is very valuable for them, that is a bracelets of white that bracelets of white shells, right? And this is known as the Mowgli, right? And then there is exchange of Sula and the Mowgli among the tribes. And for this Kula system, there is a well-defined roots. You understand this? There is a well-defined roots and the traditions, right? There are well-defined rules for the exchange of these articles, right? There are well-defined rules for exchange of these articles, traditional rules and the laws, right? And see, the possession of these articles, no one can possess these articles for forever, right? One could possess it for a shorter period of a time, and then that person has to pass on that article, right? But this possession of these articles, either Sulva or the Mowgli, the possession of these articles enhances the um, enhances the um, position of an individual who possesses this among the members, among the community members, right? This shows that the person who possesses it could be wealthy, and as no one could possess it for a longer duration, what matters is the cumulative possession, for how many times that person has possessed that article. Suppose someone has possessed that article for once, for twice, for three times, for four times, that the cumulative possession again shows the importance, or the it enhances the position of that person among the members, right? So no one can possess those articles for forever, as there is a well defined route, right? That long necklace, the red long necklace known as the sulva, it moves in the clockwise direction, and that Mowgli moves in an anti-clockwise direction. And then there are the certain definite rules for the possession as well as for the exchange of these articles. And then as per those rules, they exchange those articles, and in exchange of these articles one has to pay, and pay something, that one has to pay in equivalents, right? It could not be in form of money, but it could be in form of anything which is of equal, of similar importance, or of somewhat equal importance, although it could not be exactly equal, but of equivalence, right? Which should be of equivalence importance, right? Next is, after possessing it for a shorter period, one has to pass it on. Okay, one cannot exchange it anytime, right? There is a certain period, a dates, that there should be a well defined dates, or that date should be announced. Announced in advance for exchange of these articles. There are these certain traditions, there are these certain rules for exchange of these articles. So it includes a ceremonial process. The exchange of these articles are could be these are they are exchanged during a ceremonial process. The dates are and dates for the exchange of these articles were announced in advance, and their ceremonial possessions takes place, and then only they could exchange the articles. So he described about this Kula process in detail. Then he described the importance of totem and the magic in the lives of the natives of this island, right? Uh, he described about the magic, that magic plays a very important role um, among the among these among the natives of these islands, right? They give much importance to the magicians, as everyone has a different skill set, right? A magician is one of the important person among the tribes, right? And they offer certain uh, um, goods or the exchange for the services provided by the magicians, right? And according to the natives, right, that is the death, the diseases, their diseases are the results of the magics and the counter magic. And Melino Whiskey described about the magic, about the totemage, in his monograph, right? Then he described about the exchange of articles or the gifts, right? Then he described there are two types of the gifts, that is gifts of equivalence importance or not of equivalent importance. That what he observed, that the uh, son son works for the mother, right? And if he has a sister, then he works for his sister and his family, and in return, right, he till the land for his for his sister's family, and he has to pay to his sister's family, and he has to give that crop to the sister's family, and in return what the sister families give him, that the sister's family gives him some in exchange the sister families gives him certain articles or a pig, right? Okay, picked from time to time. Although these gifts or these exchange are of these exchange or these things which has been given to the brother of the wives brother of wife, that is of not equivalent the services provided by the, that is of no equivalence, there is no comparison between the services provided by the brother and the gifts given to him by the family of this sister, right? There is no equivalence among it, that this brother provides the much more services than what he gets in return, right? But there are the certain things, that there are certain occasions are there that you have to give back the something of equivalence importance, that is among the that is during that kula process, one has to exchange the article, right, for which is of equivalence importance or equivalence value, right? So this is the classical monograph of B. Malinovisci, that is the Argonauts of the Western Pacific, and the B. Malinovisci described the Kula process, the importance of magic in this monograph, and in our next lecture we'll discuss about another monograph. That's all for today. Thank you very much. Namaskar.